We did it. Howdy, everyone. Aaron Boster here, and thank you for learning about MS with me. I had a false start starting up this live stream. I think Murphy's Law dictates that if I prepare and get everything ready, we're going to have a faux pas when we launch. It looks like I'm online now, and I'm hopeful that my global growing online MS village will gather here today because I am really ready to have this conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about grieving loss and celebrating victories in multiple sclerosis. How are you? Anna, hey, it's great to see you. As people jump online, please tell me where you're calling in from. I absolutely adore seeing where people call in. It's all over the globe. It warms my heart, makes me feel most awesome. Again, I had a rough start getting this live stream started, and so thank you for your patience. If you are joining us on Twitter or from Facebook, howdy, hello, hi. And let me share the right link here. For those of you that want to follow along, there's already 61 of you that have jumped online. Today, you can guess what's in my glass. There's 64 of us. We've got 11 thumbs up. This is going to be a bit different than what I've done in the past. I have grown to look forward to this online village, this growing global online community. You guys energize me. You empower me. You fill me with energy to continue to create content, continue to connect with people impacted by MS. And I recently put out a poll asking you what you wanted to hear about and what you wanted to live stream about. Now, full transparency, this is the topic I was hopeful we could. This topic has been on the front of my mind now for several weeks, and the village voted, and it was a clear winner. And so what we're going to do today over the next hour to hour and a half is discussing a really difficult topic. This is a topic which is not taught to folks in medical school. This is a topic which is not taught to residents or even MS fellows. And it's one that is germane to all human beings' lives, but particularly when grappling with a chronic condition like multiple sclerosis. As you jump online, please tell me where you're coming from, and we're going to get started. My plan today, guys, is to share with you some thoughts I have on the critical importance of grieving loss in MS, and I'll explain what the hey I mean by that, and celebrating victories and successes, even the small ones. So I appreciate your attention while I share with you some of my own personal opinions on the topic. And then I want to open up the lines. This is not a Q&A ask. I'm going to ask the village members who are here today to share their own successes and to share some of their own loss. You'll type it in and I'm going to read it. Now, how are we doing with buffering? And let me know, do we have a solid connection? I'm doing this in my home, very close to my router. I didn't risk going outside like I tried the other week. Tony writes that there's some constant buffer. Let me know if you're able to hear this, guys. Give me a thumbs up if it's working, connection is solid. And if it's not so solid, let me know. I've got folks from Lima, Ohio jumping in. Hello, Debbie, how are you? Anna Keaton tells us that she's calling in from Tennessee. Divine Misery, it is wonderful to have you here. Let's see what else we've got cooking. I've got Laura from Mansfield. There's a lot of people from the Midwest. I've got Northern Arizona. Jennifer, what's up? I've got Melanie Parker joining us from Massachusetts. This is absolutely fantastic. I've got a thumbs up, and I'm hopeful that that means that the connection is really good. All right, shall we get rocking and rolling? Oh, it says that we are. Some people are having some buffering problems. Some people are able to hear this, and the audio is choppy, but it eventually catches up. All right, so there's enough thumbs up that I'm hopeful that everything not very IT savvy, and I wouldn't know how to adjust it. So let's just hope that everything works out okay. And Youssef, it's great to see you. J'espère que votre famille soit bien et dimanche soir, tout va bien chez vous. It was good, but no video. Can you guys see the video? Can you guys see me? Let me know. We've got some buffering going on. All right, well, I'm going to take a crack at it anyways. You guys can you see the video? They say it's choppy. All right, you can hear me. We're going to try to make go of it anyways. There's 88 of you online. I've got MS in the 11th percentile here. I've got Kay Fabian from UK coming on. I've got Linda here. This is super duper. Chuck O is in the house. Chuck's one of the awesome moderators that helps us out all the time. And I'm going to just go ahead and rock and roll. So for starters, I want to share with you a phone call that I received from a dear friend of mine. He is an MS expert in North Carolina, and he was one of my years ago. I am immensely proud of this young man. He is a MS neurologist par excellence. And he reached out to me because he's struggling emotionally. He's noticing an issue with a patient, and it's really pulling us. He described to me a very, very nice woman who's had not very nice MS. And despite their very best efforts, she's starting to lose ground and she's starting to lose function. And he hasn't experienced these emotions to this extreme in the past. And I've really thought a lot about what he shared with me. And I told him, I said, Max, this isn't something that I could have taught you in fellowship. This isn't something that you could learn from a book. This is something that you're going to experience with people. We as MS neurologists have a unique privilege, and that is to hopscotch through people's lives. People entrust upon us their most scared, secret, passionate, internal thoughts and emotions and feelings. And they will sometimes share things with us they don't share with their priest or even sometimes with their spouse. And we must always honor that. We must always respect that gift that they give us. Now, let's see, your feed is choppy, Dr. Boster. Guys, I'm doing the very best I can. And if it's choppy, I'm sorry. I hope that at least you can appreciate some of this. One of the things that I talked about with my former fellow on the phone is something that I'm going to talk with right now. And it's the fact that in order to live our best lives, in order to be the most awesome version of us possible, despite having the condition of MS, we have to do two things. The first thing that we have to do is we have to grieve loss. And the second thing that we have to do is we have to celebrate victory. And I want to start by talking about what I mean when I say grieve. Most people, and yes, that is most certainly an appropriate form for grief. No questions about that. But grief doesn't only apply to death. And in fact, grief applies to a lot of other things. A good definition of grief is a natural response to loss. It is a natural way to feel when you lose something. And it can involve a tremendous amount of emotional pain. And grief can elicit innumerable different emotions. You can have shock. You can have anger. You can have sense of betrayal. You can have profound sadness. And so grief, guys, is a natural response to loss. And why is this so darn relevant in the setting of multiple sclerosis? Because MS is an insidious, and I want to pause on that while I talk about areas where one might experience grief from loss and see if any of these resonate with you, all right? So you can experience loss from yes, of course. You could also experience loss from a relationship breakup. So, breaking up with someone can cause a loss where you experience grief. You can experience loss from losing a job. You can experience experience loss from financial instability. You can experience loss from losing a cherished dream you had for yourself. You can experience loss because you lose a friendship. You can experience profound and meaningful loss from having a pet pass away. And the topic of this conversation today is experiencing loss of health. I'm going to say that again. You can and you will experience grief in the setting of losing aspects of health. People impacted by MS have a chronic neurological condition, and multiple sclerosis can take away aspects of your function and your health. And if you do not recognize, if you do not accept grief, then you are doomed to never move past. Now, I have been taking care of people impacted by MS for darn near 15 years now, lives. And I have shared grief with families. I do it on a daily basis when I'm in clinic. And I want to spend the other side of the coin, celebrating victories and celebrating success. Thing I want to say, all right? There's no normal grieving, normal bereavement. That doesn't exist, guys. Set time, like you're going to grieve for 1 year and then it's over, or completely unrealistic. The grief of kind of grieved with families now for a decade and a half. Crying is natural. Crying is not something for weak people. Crying is something for real life human beings. Now, some of you in psychology may have learned the stages of grief. And the stages of grief are not exactly gospel. Now, the stages of grief are not useless. I'm not saying they're not helpful. I think they're very helpful. I'm even going to go over them with you right now. But I want to tell you that the stages of grief are not a set order, like you do 1, then 2, then 3. You don't experience the stages of grief in a set sequence and then you're done. And you don't necessarily have to experience any of them whatsoever. You certainly do not have to experience all of them. But the stages of grief, I think, do provide some important steps for us to discuss. And it speaks to the fact that when you grieve a loss, whether that be the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a dream, the loss of a neurological function, you experience a plethora of emotions. Things like denial, saying, "Nuh-uh, that didn't happen. I refuse to believe," or anger. You can experience emotions of anger because of grief, because of loss. Bargaining, where you say, "I am going to commit myself to diet and exercise and I will regain X or Y." That's a very, very common emotion in the setting of grief. Depression. Depression is something, feeling sad is an integral part of grief. And ultimately acceptance, which is where we want to get. Some people have heard me say that you're going to experience a series of things as you move through the feelings of grief. And some people might want to believe, well, I'm going to get past it and then I'll be done with it and then it'll never happen again. And that's not true. You don't go through those stages of grief in an order and learn to move past grief. Grief is something that changes who you are and stays with you. And that's not good or bad. That's just as I read some of the things on the side here in the comments in the chat, it looks like the connection is shoddy. And I'm sorry for that, guys. I honestly don't know how to fix it. I hope that you'll bear with me while we continue to do this today. There's a lot of other emotions that you experience in grief beyond the stages that I just laid out for you. And shock and disbelief are big ones. Sadness, feelings of guilt are very common when people go through grief. And I have already mentioned anger, but there's another one, fear. People can feel scared. So why am I sitting here talking about grief during a live stream related to MS? It's because people impacted by MS can lose function. And there are a myriad of functions that MS can take away from you. And I'll use an example, erectile function. I take care of some gentlemen, young men, who have lost their ability to maintain an adequate erection for sex. And it is only appropriate to grieve the loss of that function. If you were grieving the loss of a relationship or of a job or of a dream or the loss of someone that you care about, it is appropriate. In fact, I personally feel it is required. At the keys. And she has lost the functional use of her dominant hand. She really can't feel it very much anymore. And she can no longer play piano the way that she once did. She's not dead. She's nowhere near being dead. But her dream of playing the piano and her function in her hand is no longer there. And it is only appropriate that she grieve the loss of her hand. So what am I talking about doing? I am talking about admitting to yourself that this sucks. I am talking about saying out loud that this hurts. And I'll use the example just made of someone who's lost the function of their hand. It is appropriate to say out loud to those around you and to admit to yourself that you experience physical and emotional pain associated with the loss of a function. I don't think that the right move is to ignore it. I don't think that the right move is to pretend it didn't happen. I don't think the right move is to just buck up. If you do that, I think that this never, and I think in order to find a place where you can move past this, and I'll get to that, I think with acknowledging the pain. Now, the second thing that I think that we must do when dealing with grief as it relates to loss of neurological function is that we have to accept that grief comes in lots of different flavors. And it can cause you to experience a lot of different emotions. And they can vacillate. It's like a roller coaster. You can have a day where you think it's not that bad. And then later in the same day, you're enraged. And later in the same evening, you're profoundly guilty, as if maybe you've done something wrong. And that's normal. And so I think the second thing that we have to do when we are grieving the loss of neurological function is admit to ourselves that we can have a host of emotions when grieving, is to reach out to our village. That's what we are, guys. I mean, look, there's 97 of you from around the globe that are gathered here right now in this moment with me. And this is a village. This is a form of support. I want you to have the biggest village possible. I want you to recognize that there are people in your lives that love you. I love you. The people joining in here care about you. And I want you, the village members at home, the partner, the spouse, the parent, the child, the neighbor, the priest, the rabbi, the postman. This is your village. And when you're grieving loss, the neurological loss of hand function, the loss of vision in your eye, the loss of a dream, the loss of something that MS has taken away from you, I want you to reach out to your village. I want you to let them know that you're hurting. I want you to let them know that you're grieving, and I want you to allow them to love you. You need that. You don't have MS by yourself. You do not have this disease by yourself. You have it with your village, and it is only appropriate to allow your village to embrace you. And so I really think that's super, super important. The last thing to go out is that when you're grieving, you want to try to maintain your routines to the best of your ability. If you go for walks in the evening, go for walks in the evening. If you are embracing exercise, make sure you keep exercising. If you are in a book club, go to the book club. You need to get out of your house. You need to be around people. And I'm not saying that any of these things are easy, but I think that they're really, really important. I've seen patients who refuse to grieve. And you know what, guys? It doesn't work out very well. I'm speaking from a decade and a half of experience taking care of families impacted by MS. If you don't allow yourself to grieve the loss of function, then you won't ever move past it. And you won't be able to see what's on the other side. Because I'm going to drop some serious knowledge on you after I take a sip of this deliciousness. All right, you ready for it? It is appropriate to grieve the loss of function in MS. And then you have to say, now what? Let me repeat that. It is appropriate to grieve the loss that you experience from MS. And then you have to ask yourself, now what? Because you're not dead yet. Because we're not done with you. And it's not a death, it's a loss, and it can hurt. Then you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do after that? And so I have a patient whose dream was to be in the military. And this guy would be an amazing member of the military. But because of his diagnosis, he cannot. He'll never serve the way that he had hoped. And that's terrible. And it is fair to be upset about that. It is fair to experience pain because of that. It is fair to go through the emotional roller coaster of grieving. But he's only in his 20s. He's not dead yet. And he has a long life ahead of him. And so he has to then figure out, okay, what am I going to do next? And that is such an important point. Life, as my mentor used to say, is sometimes too generous. And it can throw weird curveballs at you. And it can take away things that you didn't want it to. MS is good at that, guys. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to experience that. And then we have to say, okay, now what? I want you to think about that for a second. Be so kind. I'm going to ask you guys on the live stream to do something that is rather intense. I'm going to ask you, if you are watching this live stream or if you're watching the replay in the video, I want you to share a loss that you've experienced. Now, if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. But if you're willing, I want you to type in the comments a loss that you've had. It could be a loss of the ability to wear high heel shoes. It could be the loss of the ability to complete a master's degree or to seek a promotion or to hike. It could be the loss of a relationship. It could be the loss of a profession. It could be the loss of the ability to swallow safely or the ability to control your bladder or the ability to climb up or down steps. I'm asking you to share that with us right now. And the reason I'm asking you is because of all the other village members that have gathered here. I want them to see that they're not alone. I want them to realize that we all experience loss and that we all go through the process of grieving, and we're not by ourselves, because you're not by yourself, not at all. And so if you're willing, share with me loss that you've experienced. Someone writes, the loss of the ability to travel, a pet, the loss of being me, losing the ability to talk and walk, someone's job, having perfect vision. This is exactly what I'm asking you to do. And so I'm going to take a moment and read through some of these. A loved one moving on to someone. Halfway through nursing school, had to quit because student loan debt. the ability to walk at night without falling, the loss of vision in my left eye, loss of being able to walk my dogs. Let it out, guys. Share with us. Share with me loss that you've experienced. Share with us grieving that you've gone through. Are you familiar with the term cathartic? Because it is. It is really, really cathartic to get it off your chest. And that's what I'm asking you to do right now. I want you to share with us loss and grief that you've had. Because MS is good at that. MS can take away things from us. And it doesn't make us less people. It doesn't make us less human. In fact, we have to find ourselves again on the other side. I'm switching to water. Dottie writes, without a cane. She used to hike and travel for work. El Brady says the loss of being able to work, the loss of being able to drive. Lori Cohen, miss being able to travel and go to parks and museums. Tiffany says energy, motivation, energy. I want to give this a few more minutes. This is really, really important to me. And I, as you know, as soon as this live stream is over, I will read through each and every single one of these comments. And this global online village is not limited to 20 people that jumped online right now. Anticipation that thousands upon thousands of people impacted by MS will read through this. And I want them to see you sharing from your heart. I want them to see you sharing the loss that you've felt and the grief that you've gone through. Because you're helping those people know they are not alone. Not at all. Okay. Now it's time to shift gears, because this live stream is about grieving loss and celebrating success. And I am going to shift gears with you now. I am going to take you on a journey into the second half of this live stream, where we're going to talk about success and celebrating success and celebrating victory. Now, a lot of times when we think about celebrating, we might think about celebrating really, really big things, like graduating college, a big thing, or getting married. That's a big thing. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about celebrating the little things. I'm talking about celebrating the little successes, the small victories. Because if you look, you will find very, very commonly your life is littered full of small successes. And in the same way that I challenge you to identify loss and grieve it, I challenge you to identify small victories and celebrate them. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about small victories that we set for ourselves. These can be things like, I wanted to finish my undergraduate degree, and I did. They can be things like, I wanted to keep working at this particular job for another few years, and I did. It can be things like, I wanted to sleep through the night and not pee myself, and I did. It can be things like, I wanted to be able to go to the bathroom on my own, wipe myself, my pants back on without assistance, and I did. It can be things like, I wanted to take public transportation to the library, and I did. Things like, I wanted to meet my friend for lunch, and I was scared, and I did it. And I challenge the people online, the 115 people that have jumped online, I challenge you to seek out the small successes in your life, the small victories that you've accomplished, and celebrate them. And this is really, really important. I'm going to tell you a couple quick stories. One time I was giving a public presentation to a group of people impacted by MS. And I was one of several presenters. And one of the presenters was a woman with MS. And she told a remarkable story. She was a self-proclaimed couch potato housewife. That's how she referred to herself, as a couch potato housewife. And when she got MS, she decided that she was going to run a marathon, which quite honestly seems pathologic to me, but God bless her. So she was going to run a marathon. And she trained and jumped into the Boston Marathon. So she didn't qualify. She just jumped in the Boston Marathon. And she actually finished the Boston Marathon, which is in and of itself colossal. Now, the local news had found out about this event, and they kind of videoed her. And afterwards, they interviewed her about her success in doing this amazing thing. And after the interview was over, some men approached her and said that they were mountain climbers, and they wanted to know whether she would join them on an expedition. This is a true story. I've met this woman. And she thought they were joking, but they weren't. They were being dead serious. Fast forward, she has now climbed the 7 tallest peaks, the tallest peaks in every single continent in the world. She's a professional mountain climber. And she delivered this really moving speech where she talked about all this. And the take-home has stuck with me. The take-home was not that you should become a mountain climber. I certainly am not going to do that. The take-home was everybody's mountain is different. Some people's mountain is walking to the mailbox and then walking back without falling. Some people's mountain is staying awake through church. Some people's mountain is preparing a meal for their family. And her point was, you have to embrace your mountain and you have to celebrate it. I think that clinic is a special place. I really believe that in my heart, that clinic is a special place. The door is closed. It's a privileged environment. We don't talk about it outside of clinic. And it's a place where we can grieve loss the way that I've described, and we can celebrate success. We can celebrate success. I want you to listen, if you will, while I share a few stories. And I am going to share a few stories of patients of mine where we experienced success. And if you look in the chat, I'm including a couple links to some videos that I've done. These 2 videos I called the Improvement Project. And 2 that I've put in, both of them are stories of real life human beings. I've changed some of the demographics to make sure that they remain private so you don't know who they are. But I've shared stories of patients that have experienced improvements, where they've experienced amazing things that have happened. And I just want to share with you that it's possible that these things can truly happen. And so I'm just throwing these links up here, and videos on my channel that you could check out if you wanted. But I just wanted to kind of throw them out there for you. And so let me share with you a few stories. These are complex stories because they're real. These are real life human beings. And they're people that are really, really special to me. All right. So the first one is about a gentleman, and he was a really, really tall guy. Now, I am 5'6", so most people appear tall to me. But this guy was really tall. Now, I want to say like 6'5" or taller. So he was a towering man. He was an academician. He was a mathematician. And he had primary progressive MS in an era before therapy was available for him. And he was a fighter. Oh, my God. He was a fighter. As his disease progressed, he lost his ability to walk without assistance. And he started to need to use a cane, and it became increasingly difficult for him to use his walker. And he got to the point where he was using a wheelchair sometimes. And he came to clinic with his family. And we grieved that loss, by the way. But he wasn't done yet. And so he did something remarkable. He went to the local YMCA with a life jacket and a walker. And he got into the swimming pool with a life jacket and a walker. And every day he walked laps. He exercised hardcore. This guy put forth profound effort. in an era where there were no therapies. And he came back to my clinic, and my MA said, Dr. B, this guy's not going to do his timed walk unless you come out in the hallway. So I got out in the hallway, and he's standing there, this tall man. He's standing there with this walker. And he says, are you ready? I said, yes. He picked up the walker, and he walked. Guys, he didn't do that because of some drug. He did that at sheer force of will. It was amazing. This man, through hard work and exercise, by walking in a swimming pool with a life jacket and a walker, regained function. Now, it wasn't forever. He still had MS. He still had primary progressive MS in an era where there were no therapies. And he maintained his ability to walk, I want to say, for a year or two. And then the disease got worse. And eventually he stopped being able to ambulate. And he was in a scooter. And eventually a scooter became too difficult and he was in a wheelchair. Now, that wonderful man has passed away. And I think it is appropriate to grieve the loss, but to celebrate the success, because even for a short period of time, we regained a function. And that's amazing. Now, that's not some hypothetical. That's not a case study. That's a real life human being that I had the privilege to take care of. Sorry, I told you this would be a bit emotional for me, and it certainly is. I want to tell you a different story about a guy I met who's my age, and he developed MS when he was 18, very young, and MS was not nice to him. And when I met him, he was in a wheelchair, and when I got his legs, he bent. And we did two things. Number one, we gave him hardcore chemotherapy. Now, this predates Limtrada and Ocrevus and Tysabri. Those drugs didn't exist. We gave him old school chemotherapy, Cytoxan. It's kind of wicked stuff. And we did a second thing. We implanted him with a baclofen pump. And he got out of a chair. Turns out the guy's tall. He's like 6'3", 6'4". He's a tall dude. And he started to ambulate with bilateral crutches. Because of the Cytoxan, we quelled the inflammation in his brain. And because of the baclofen pump, we relaxed his leg. And he was able to stand up from a chair. And he put that chair away for several years. It was awesome. Now, as a young, early on in my career MS neurologist, I felt like a freaking rock star. I really did. I was so happy and so excited, as was he and his family. And it is appropriate to celebrate that success. That's not a small success. That's a big success. But it was a limited success. It didn't last forever. He still had MS. He had had MS for a very, very long time. And it was not nice to his spinal cord. It was not nice to his brain. And over time, he again had to sit down in a chair. I consider him a friend. And he can't walk any longer. And he's lost a lot of function. And my point here is we're living real lives, the best that we can. And I lament, I grieve his loss. I wish I could go back in time to when he was 18 and apply highly effective therapies then, but that ship had sailed. What I'm sharing with you is it is only appropriate to celebrate the success that we experienced and the loss that we experienced. I'll also share with you, this guy has an amazing spirit. And when you talk to him, and he's disabled, he's really bad at the chair. I say, how you doing? He goes, if I was any better, I'd be twins. And I love that. Let me share with you another story. of a young lady who was a college athlete. She ran in college. I don't know why people like running. And she's a medical professional. She went and did actually a very advanced residency in a type of surgery. And her MS was not nice. It made it so that she had trouble controlling her stool. And as a resident, she would wear a dependent undergarment. She would wear a diaper under her scrubs because she would lose her bowel function. When she walked down the hall in the hospital, she'd hold on to the railing because if she let go, she'd fall over. And she shared with me that she couldn't close her eyes to kiss her husband because she would have poor balance and fall over. The most important thing that she shared, maybe not the most important, but something very important that she shared with me is that when she was diagnosed, because of her poor balance, she had to get rid of her high heel shoes. She had to throw out all of her high heel shoes. And she shared with me how she grieved the loss of her high heel shoes. Remember I said you can grieve for a lot of reasons? She identified the pain associated with getting rid of some really, really nice shoes, which I understand. Now, when I met her, we really hit it hard. And we signed her up for some very, very intense therapy. And it worked. And she regained her ability to walk without holding on to the railing. In fact, she was able to jog upwards of a mile before motor fatigue set in. She could close her eyes and kiss her husband. But maybe most impactful was that she started to wear 2-inch heels again. That is a success. That is a victory. That is worth celebrating. And that's what I'm doing with you right now. I want to point out to you that we have to look for the solutions. We have to look for the day-to-day successes that we might experience, and we have to embrace them. I'll share another one with you. Many of you are familiar with the drug Ampyra. Ampyra, or 4-aminopyridine, is a pill that treats heat sensitivity in MS. It was FDA approved here in the United States for walking speed, but it really impacts any heat-related symptom. And one time I was talking to a family impacted by MS. The husband is the patient. The wife was there. And as we were wrapping up the visit, literally my hand on the doorknob, I said, oh, yeah, I forgot to ask you guys, did you try the Ampyra? Which the patient said, yeah, I tried it. And I said, do you think it helped? And the wife looked at me and said, Dr. B, you may never remove his Ampyra. And I didn't really understand. I said, okay. And she said, I don't think you're understanding. You may never remove his Ampyra. I said, what do you mean? Turns out that early on in the process, he developed erectile dysfunction. He had in obtaining an adequate erection for vaginal penetration. And it turns out that that was heat related. As his core body temperature raised, it would short circuit his spinal cord, and then his stuff didn't work. Well, when he took Ampyra, quote, he was 18 again. And on Ampyra, he was able to have an erection adequate for intercourse, and it changed both of their lives. And that, my friends, is a celebration. That is a victory. That is a success. Will that show up in a medical journal? No. Will that be reported in a clinical trial? No. Does that mean something to a family impacted by MS? Heck yeah, it does, in a really, really big way. Very important. I want to share another story with you of success. And this is a story which is very germane to my home state of Ohio. A young man, 39 years old, his wife left him, had a child under the age of 10, had to move home with his parents in eastern Ohio. And for those of you that are not familiar with Ohio geography, that's not a heavily populated part of the world. That's really country and forest and stuff like that. And he ambulated with a walker, and he was pretty darn disabled. And we really were aggressive in his treatment. And he came to see me with his father. And he's sitting there in the room when I walk in the room, and his father is sitting there in the room when I walk in the room. And I said, "How you doing?" And he's a pretty quiet guy. He says, "I'm doing okay." And his father said, "He's doing better than okay, Doc. Ask him where's his walker." And I look around the room and there's no walker. I said, "Where's your walker?" He says, "I don't need it." And then I realized he didn't have a cane. I said, "Wait a second, where's your cane?" He says, "I don't need it." To which I said, "Bullshit." And he said, "No, seriously, I don't need it." And he stood up and we went out in the hallway and he walked 20 feet. He turned around, waved, and he walked back. Wow. I shed tears. His father shed tears. It was awesome. And then something even cooler happened. He came back to see me, I don't know, I want to say maybe 6 months later. And this time he came with 2 male family members. And they came to me to ask me a man's question. Now, if any of you know me, that's kind of funny because I'm not like a macho man. I don't have guns. I don't play a lot of sports. I don't follow the basketball and the baseball and stuff. And so I don't know that I'm the best guy to ask a man's question, but they did. They wanted to ask Dr. B a man's question. What was the man's question? They wanted my permission for him to hunt. In his culture, hunting is a badge of honor. And where he lives, hunting's hard because there's hills that you have to walk up and down. And he couldn't do it before, but now he could. Now, I'm not a big, giant gun guy, but I said, go out and kill a deer. And it was so exciting. And we celebrated the fact that he could do that again. Now, let me share with you that fast forward several years and he's back to using a cane. And sometimes, again, he needs a walker. And he still has MS, and it's still a nasty condition. But it's appropriate to celebrate the success, even temporary success. It is appropriate to celebrate the victory, even the temporary victory. Now, I've just shared with you some very, very personal things, things that are very near and dear to my heart. And I'm going to reach out and ask you to do something very personal. A little while ago, I asked you in the live stream to share with us loss. I asked you if you were comfortable to share loss that you grieved. I now challenge you. I challenge you to share with us success and victory. And it can be anything. It can be, I did the laundry, and the laundry's really hard, and I got it done. It can be, I got my kid to school on time, and that's a challenge in my house. It can be regaining a function. It can be accepting using an assist device so that you can accomplish a goal. And I'm going to ask you to please share those things with us. Why? Why would I ask that of you? Because I want people in MS to see that members of this global online village experience success, experience victory. I want people to see that others can share moments of wonderfulness, and it's going to help them feel more confident and more comfortable in sharing. So do me a kind favor. Please type in the comments. If you're participating in this live stream right now, or if you're watching the replay later, please type in the successes that you've had. And I don't care if they're itsy bitsy, teeny tiny. I don't care if it was one moment of your life and it never happened again. I don't care at all. I want you to share that with us. Please. That would mean the world to me. It would be a contribution that only you can provide to this village. And I promise you it'll resonate. I promise you that it will help empower. I promise you that it will help energize and educate others that despite having a not so nice condition, that there's opportunities for success. So I'm going to ask you to please do that. This has been a remarkable live stream for me. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not been an easy one. Talking about grief makes me reflect on my own loss. Talking about success is emotional in and of itself. And this is a journey that I signed up for to take with people impacted by MS. And it is a gift that I get to hopscotch through people's lives. And you give us a gift by sharing. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for learning about MS with me. And I want to thank you for your willingness to get together as a village and to share grief and to share loss and to share what that feels like. And I want to thank you for your willingness to share those successes, however small, however transient, those victories. Because it is my very strong and firm belief that if we are going to be the most awesome version of us possible, despite having MS, we have to do those two things. We have to grieve and then move on because we're not dead yet. And we have to acknowledge success and victory, even if it's transient. And those are the thoughts that I'm going to leave you with today. I try to put out a YouTube video about once a week. Oftentimes it's twice a week because I'm so excited I can't help myself from sharing. I try to jump online and do live streams as often as I can. Oftentimes it's a couple times a month. This was a special one for me. And thank you for joining me. Be well and take care. And until the next time I see you on the interwebs, whether that be on a video or whether that be on a live stream, God bless you and thank you for participating and take care and be good.